Welcome to the Sci-Fi Evolution channel. Twin suns hung high in the sky, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape. The group gathered in an uneven circle, their eyes shining with fun and intrigue. Among them stood Vierna, a tall Xenia warrior with jade-like skin that reflected the sunlight as she crossed her arms over her chest. There was a grin on her lips, and her golden eyes sparkled with contempt. Standing in front of her was Corwin Flint, the only Terran on this remote planet. His physique, though muscular by Terran standards, was only a shadow compared to the Xenia warriors around him. "Do you really think you can match us?" There was sarcasm in Vierna's voice, and a wave of laughter swept through the crowd. She flexed one arm, and the alien muscles moved under her skin like braided steel. "I could lift a massive rock twice my size when I was still a cub. You better not embarrass yourself." Corwin exhaled slowly, already used to the skepticism and ridicule that suggested that Terrans mattered more than their frail appearance. He had seen this reaction 100 times. "Maybe," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Maybe you underestimate me," he barked, laughing. "Am I underestimating you?" She turned to the others, spreading her arms. "Did you hear that? The little Terran thinks he can match us. Maybe we'll give him a chance, at least for fun." Another warrior stepped forward, lifting a massive boulder from the edge of the training area. It was a jagged gray object, easily twice Corwin's size, and must have weighed several hundred pounds. Xenia warriors often used these stones to test their strength. It was just a warm-up for them. Vierna placed one hand on the boulder, effortlessly lifting it into the air as if it weighed nothing. The crowd roared in approval as she held him there for a few seconds. Corwin's hand tensed, his fingers dug into the stone. His muscles tensed, veins bulged on his skin. The weight was enormous, much heavier than any Terran could handle. For a moment, it seemed like nothing was going to happen. Then, slowly and incredibly, the boulder began to move. There was silence in the crowd, Vierna's grin faltering as the impossible became reality. The Terran was picking him up. The silence was deafening. Every Xenia warrior froze, their cocky grins gone as they watched the impossible unfold before their eyes. The Terran did not just move the boulder, did not struggle with its weight, but steadily lifted it from the ground. Corwin's breathing was steady, his muscles tense like steel ropes under his skin. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, but his expression remained resolute. He didn't groan or scream from the effort, as they expected. Instead, he lifted it with precision and control, as if he had completed this task 1,000 times. The audience was impressed. Vierna, who had been laughing loudly at first, now stared in complete amazement, involuntarily took a step forward, her golden eyes narrowed, as if trying to see some kind of trick. There must be some, because Terrans are weak, fragile, and not built for strength like Xenia. However, Corwin stood straight. His arms were tense. The boulder was now off the ground. A gust of wind kicked up the dust beneath him, swirling around his boots as if nature itself recognized this feat. A murmur ran through the crowd. "This can't be happening," someone whispered. "He must be using some kind of device." The other muttered. Vierna, clenching his fists, jaw tense. "No, he's doing it with his own strength." Corwin held the weight for a few moments, allowing disbelief to take root in their minds before doing something even more startling. He changed his stance then, with a burst of strength, threw the boulder up and caught it again. A collective sigh rose, as no one had ever seen such a feat. Pure strength and absolute control weren't just physical strength. They were something more, something deeply Terran. With a final push, Corwin lowered the boulder, allowing it to fall to the ground with a crash. He exhaled, flexing his arms, his breathing steady. Unperturbed, he turned to look at the warriors, meeting their astonished gazes with a calm, unreadable expression. However, some still considered the Terrans weak. For the first time, no one said a word. The Xenia warriors, who had always viewed the Terrans as inferior, were uncertain. Xenia took a deep breath as she approached him. Her gaze was now more analytical than mocking. She studied him with new eyes, as if seeing him for the first time. Finally, she asked, "Corwin, you all think that strength is just physical, but strength is more than that. It's a matter of perseverance. It's a matter of determination. It's a matter of knowing that even when your body is on the verge of collapse, your mind won't let it happen." Xenia crossed her arms, her hands still full of doubt, but now tinged with something else: admiration. She admitted that it was impressive, but strength alone wasn't enough. "Do you really think that a Terran can match Xenia in battle?" Corwin's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. He could see it now, the shift in their worldview. They no longer saw him as a joke. They saw him as a challenge. And that was exactly what he wanted. "Why don't you come forward and find out?" he said. The challenge had been thrown, and judging by the way Xenia's eyes sparkled, she was going to accept it. A heavy silence filled the air, thick with tension and disbelief. No one dared to move. The alien eyes were fixed on the Terran who had just destroyed their idea of power. Xenia's piercing golden gaze was fixed on Corwin, her fists clenched and unclenched at her sides. The other Xeni warriors exchanged anxious glances, their mocking grins replaced by concern. "The moment of truth has arrived," Xenia admitted, her voice flat but tinged with uncertainty. "Lifting a stone is one thing, but surviving a battle against Xenia is another." Corwin tilted his head slightly, a hint of amusement appearing in his expression. Xenia slowly took a step forward, her stance imperceptibly changing. The other warriors stepped back. Instinctively, they formed a wide circle around them. It was no longer just a show of strength, but a test, a reckoning. "If you want respect among warriors, Terran," she said, flexing her shoulders, her taut muscles tensing under her armor, "you have to earn it." The crowd cheered in anticipation. Corwin exhaled slowly, stretching his neck until it cracked. "Okay," he said, going out to the center. "Let's see if the Terrans are really as weak as you think." Xenia moved first. She lunged with the speed of a predator, closing the distance between them in an instant. Corwin barely had time to react before she was at his side. Her fist was a blur. The blow should have shattered bones. But Corwin dodged at the very last moment. The wind from her attack blew past his face, but he had already taken up a position. His body moved with precision, not wasting a single unnecessary movement before she had time to recover. He counterattacked, elbowing her in the ribs. Surprisingly, Xenia grunted, staggering back. The crowd gasped as the Terran had just punched the Xeni warrior and forced her to retreat. She looked at him, her eyes alight with something new. Xenia chuckled. "So you're not just strong, you really know how to fight." Corwin shrugged his shoulders. "I had a feeling that brute force wouldn't work on you." She lunged again, faster and sharper this time. Their movements merged into a dance of strength and precision. Xenia fought like a warrior raised in battle, her blows relentless and brutal. Corwin, however, moved like a tactician, dodging just enough to throw her off balance. The fight turned into a storm of movements, and a fist almost hit Corwin in the face. The counterattack missed Xenia's shoulder. The crowd leaned forward, mesmerized. They had never seen such a fight before. A clash between two beings who should never have been equals, and yet they were here. Then it happened. Xenia delivered the finishing blow, a crushing blow aimed at his chest, enough to end the fight. The fight would have ended here and now, but Corwin could see it coming. He dodged, turned, and then his fist hit her in the jaw. Not a reckless blow, not a desperate swing, but a perfectly calibrated, expertly delivered blow. The impact sent her into retreat, her feet dragging on the ground. For the first time in her life, she felt something completely unfamiliar. She felt depressed, and silence fell over the audience. Xenia touched her jaw, Her breathing was uneven. And then she laughed, a deep, sincere laugh that scared everyone. She exhaled, shaking her head. "You really caught me off guard, Corwin." She straightened up, flexing her shoulders. "I said that strength is more than just muscles." Vierna studied him for a long moment, then grinned. "Maybe I underestimated the Terrans after all." The crowd exploded. Not from anger, not from denial, but from something even more shocking. Respect. Corwin had done the impossible. He forced an entire race of warriors to see the Terrans in a new light. Vierna was still muttering, her expression shifting from disbelief to something much more dangerous. She was absently rubbing her jaw, looking at Corwin with a look that was no longer dismissive. It was something completely different, a challenge. She was faced with a prospect that shocked her, a warrior forced to rethink everything she thought she knew. For Xenia, strength was the only thing that mattered, defining respect, hierarchy, and even camaraderie. Until now, no Terran has ever been considered anything more than a fragile, soft-bodied alien. However, this Terran proved her wrong. She exhaled slowly, putting her racing thoughts in order. "You're unpredictable," she confessed. Corwin chuckled. "I get told that a lot." The noise in the crowd turned into something heavier, a whisper of admiration, a whisper of defiance. The others were now looking at Corwin with new eyes, assessing him in a way they had never done before. But Vierna suffered the most from this realization. Power was everything. It wasn't just about brute force, but also about control, precision, and adaptability. Corwin demonstrated all three qualities and stood up to the Xenia warrior without backing down. Her fingers twitched at her sides. Why did it bother her? For years, she had judged warriors only by Xenia standards. There were clear rules and clear expectations. The Terrans had never even been taken into account. But Corwin had just shattered that illusion with one well-placed blow, and now something inside her refused to calm down. The tension in the air was still thick, but it was different now. Before, it was the weight of ridicule and neglect. Now it was curiosity, respect, and challenge. One of the Xenia warriors, a tall bully named Varen, took a step forward. "Terran," he said slowly, the same disbelief in his voice that Vierna had once expressed. "Do all your kin look like you?" Corwin laughed softly, shaking his head. "Not everything, but enough." The warriors exchanged glances, passing on silent messages. Between them, Vierna did not look away. Something had changed inside Corwin. She knew it, even if she didn't understand it yet. For the first time in her life, she found herself looking at the Terran and wondering what else they were wrong about. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken thoughts. Xenia warriors have always believed in strength as the absolute measure of a person's worth. But what they witnessed shook that foundation. Corwin not only raised the impossible, but he did it without fear or hesitation. Vierna's fingers tightened as she studied him. Xenia's strength was crude, built over centuries of genetics, cleansing and rigorous training, but Corwin's strength was unlike any other. It was her willpower that really bothered her. It wasn't just about lifting heavy objects or hitting hard. It was about overcoming limitations and breaking down barriers that should not be broken. Xenia's strength is determined by physical prowess, but Terrans challenge the very concept of the possible, making them formidable. "You don't fight like Xenia." When Vierna spoke, her voice was measured. "But you're not afraid of me." Corwin slowly tilted his head, with a slight smile on his lips, but this time it wasn't mocking. She was curious. For most people, Corwin's expression would have hardened a little, but there was a glimmer of something deep in his eyes. "I've seen worse. Strength is not only what you can lift, it's also how much you can withstand." These words have sunk into my soul like seeds taking root. Endurance. Xenia never talks about endurance. Battles are one-sided displays of brutality and force. There is no Vierna moved forward, studying his expression intently for a hint of false bravado. There was nothing! A lot of questions were spinning in her head, but one stood out. "Corwin, tell me," she said, "what's the hardest thing you've been through?" His jaw clenched for a moment, so fast that she almost didn't notice it. Then he spoke. "I've seen my men engage in battles they were never meant to win. I've seen them lose everything and still rise up again." He met her gaze without hesitation and declared, "This is the essence of Terran power." For the first time in her life, Vierna felt something unfamiliar pulling at the edges of her carefully constructed world. Had they misjudged the Terrans? Vierna had never really respected Terrans. They were weak, fragile, and lacked brute strength. Xenia warriors were known for their skill and power. But when she stood in front of Corwin, she experienced something she had never expected: insecurity. Or perhaps something even more dangerous. Her gaze lingered on him as the dust settled around the colossal boulder he had picked up. The weight of what she had just witnessed weighed on her beliefs like an inexorable tide. No ordinary mortal should have been capable of what he just did. But he did it, and he did it without desperation or fear, only with determination. In Xenia culture, battles were often won through brute force and the superiority of warriors over the weak. There was no need for willpower when victory was assured. But Corwin fought against the impossible and emerged victorious. He took a slow step toward her. "I don't understand you, Terran Corwin," she said, frowning. Holding his breath, he wiped a streak of dust from his cheek. "It's mutual," he replied with an annoyingly confident grin. The phrase that would once have made her chuckle now only deepened her confusion. "I've never asked about the expected outcome," he simply states. "I'm doing what needs to be done." And again, this stubborn unwillingness to accept limitations, this annoying ability to break down iron barriers. The warriors have never even thought about challenging this, and it's starting to annoy me. Vierna crosses her arms, watching him intently. "Maybe we misjudged you," Corwin grins. She exhales sharply, but this time there is no disappointment, just something more unexpected: admiration. "I've never considered Terrans equal before, but now I'm starting to doubt that our strength has been misjudged. Perhaps what makes them dangerous is not their physical abilities, but their unwavering will, which scares me the most." Vierna has always believed that power is absolute. It is a fixed dimension that defines a person's place in the universe. The weak followed the strong, and the strong ruled without question. But as she stood in front of Corwin, watching him catch his breath after his incredible feat, she felt something she had never experienced before. For the first time in her life, she was unsure where the true power was. Corwin flexed his arms, flexing his shoulders, as if lifting a massive boulder was a simple afternoon exercise. "So what now?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with amusement. She narrowed her eyes. "I have to test you further," she said, crossing her arms. "Do you want to lose again?" Her jaw clenched, but instead of snapping, she found herself smiling, the genuine, uncontrollable smile of a warrior. The thought of testing herself against him, pushing her own boundaries against his unwavering determination, ignited a spark in her. The other Xeni warriors gathered, watching in stunned silence. They expected Corwin's failure, his collapse under pressure, his breakdown like all weak creatures. Instead, he stood up straight, and now there was something rare in their eyes, perhaps curiosity. The Terrans were more than just fragile creatures on the fringes of the universe. Perhaps their power was something completely different than what Xenia culture had ever recognized. And if that was true, then Corwin was just the beginning. Vierna came over, her voice low and measured. "You've proved yourself, Terran," she told Corwin. He met her gaze without flinching, and her fingers curled into fists, a gesture of invitation, a challenge. "We're not done yet," she continued. "For the first time, I want to see how far you can go, how far I can take you." Corwin smiled. That's great. I was hoping you'd agree. And so the rivalry was established.